An extraordinary event once occurred in the land of Tennessee. A comet shot out of the sky like a ball of foxfire. But when the comet hit the top of the Tennessee mountain, a baby boy tumbled off and landed upright on his feet. His name was Davey Crockett. That's the same Davy Crockett who could carry thunder in his fists and fling lightning from his fingers. That's the same Davy who liked to holler, "I can slide down the slippery ends of rainbows. I'm half horse, half alligator, and a bit of snapping turtle. I can outrun, outlick, outholler any ringtail roar east of the Mississippi." The truth is, Davy Crockett did seem to be half varmint, just as every varmint seemed to be half Crockett. Anyone could see that he walked like an ox, ran like a fox, and swam like an eel. And he liked to tell folks, "When I was a baby, my cradle was a shell of a 600-pound turtle. When I was a boy, I ate so much bear meat and drank so much buffalo milk, I could whip my weight in wildcats." Which is less amazing than you might think, because by the time David Crockett was 8 years old, he weighed 200 pounds with his shoes off, his feet clean, and his stomach empty. David Crockett loved to brag about things he could lick, from wildcats to grizzly bears. Sometimes, though, his bragging got him into big trouble. Take the time he got caught in a thunderstorm in the middle of the forest carrying nothing but a stick. After hiking some 10 miles in the rain, he was so hungry he could have wolfed down a hickory stump, roots and all. He began to search through the black thicket for something good to eat. Just as he pared some trees with a stick, he saw two big eyes staring at him, lit up like a pair of red, hot coals. Thinking he'd come across a fun fight and a tasty feast combined, Davy neighed like a horse, then hollered like a screech owl. "Hello there, I'm Dave Crockett, and I'm real hungry." Which means bad news for any warm-blooded, four-legged, squinting-eyed, yellow-bellied creature. Thunder suddenly lit the woods, and Davy got a good look at his dinner. "By thunder," he breathed, and his hair went up on the back of his neck, and his eyes got as big as dogwood blossoms. Staring back at him was the big eater of the forest, the biggest panther this side of the Mississippi. He was just sitting there on a pile of bones and skulls all around him like pumpkins in a pumpkin patch. Before Davy could beg the varmint's pardon, the panther spit a sea of froth at him, and his teeth began to grind like a 60-horsepower sawmill. "Oh, I didn't mean what I just said," Davy apologized, backing away slowly. But the panther shot white fire from his eyes and gave 3 or 4 sweeps of his tail as he advanced. "You think you can forgive me for making a little joke?" Davy begged. But the panther let out a growl about as loud as 500 boulders crashing down a mountainslide. "Want to sing a duet?" Davy asked. But the panther just growled again and took another step closer. "Guess I'm gonna have to get serious," Davy said, trying to bluff his way out. The panther stepped forward. Davy crouched down. "I'm getting serious now," he warned. But the panther just put his head real low like he was about to leap. With disaster staring at him in the face, Davy suddenly concentrated on grinding his own teeth until he sounded like he was a 100-horsepower sawmill. Then he concentrated on growling his own growl until he sounded like a 5,000 boulders tumbling down a mountainslide. As he stepped toward the panther, they were both a grinding and a growling, until the final growl and the final grate brought the two together. And there, in the rainy forest, they began wrestling each other for death or dinner. Just as the panther was about to make chopped meat out of Davy's head, Davy gave him an upward blow under the jaw. He swung him around like a monkey and throttled him by the neck, and then threw him over one shoulder and twirled him around by his tail. As Davy was turning the panther into bread dough, the big eater yelled for mercy. "Okay, fine," said Davy, panting. "I'm not about to skin such an amazing feller as yourself, but I'm not about to leave here to collect any more of them bones and skulls neither. I guess you better come home with me and learn some manners." So Davy Crockett led the big eater of the forest back to his cabin, and there he taught him all sorts of civilization. Davy taught him how to fold his paws and sing the tenor of church song, and how to rake leaves with his claws. Best of all, he taught him how to light the hearth fire at night with his burning eyes, then led Davy to bed in the dark. From then on, you could say that the two were best of companions. But Davy's boasting got him into trouble with more than just wild critters. It also nearly ended his political career. It seems that one year he figured that the Tennessee legislature was in need of a feller with natural sense instead of book learning. "And that feller is nobody but me," he bragged, as he went about the state making campaign speeches. "I can sleep under the blanket of snow, out-squeeze a boa constrictor, and outwit the slyest fox in the woods. I'm your man." In one of his speeches, Davy got so carried away that he boasted he once grinned an old raccoon right out of a tree. "And folks, I can grin any dang raccoon out of any dang tree in the whole dang world. If I can't, you can call me a liar and feed me to a bunch of hungry bears in the winter," he said. Well, Davy's opponent recognized that this was his big chance to prove once and for all that Davy Crockett was nothing but a big blowhard and a boaster. So one moony night in August, the feller got a crowd together, and they all stood outside Davy's cabin. The varmint hollered, "Crockett, come out here. These folks want to see a raccoon trick." "Sure," Davy said. "Be glad to show 'em." Feeling pretty confident because he believed all his own boasts, Davy led the crowd through the woods until he spied a raccoon grinning up high in a hickory tree. "Jiminy criminy, here I go. Now watch me, folks," he said. And he set out grinning at the fellow, and he grinned and grinned. And he grinned. But after he'd been grinning like a fool for a spell, that raccoon just kept sitting up in the tree, grinning back down at him, not tumbling down or nothing. After a while, folks began to get restless, and Davy began to get mad. His whole reputation was on the line. He didn't relish being fed to a bunch of bears, neither. He got so mad that he finally stumped home and got an axe. Then he returned to the woods and commenced to cutting down the tree. Well, when the tree fell down and he grabbed for the critter, he discovered the grinning raccoon was nothing but an old knothole that looked like the raccoon. "But look at this," Davy said, beaming to the crowd. "The fact is, I done grinned the bark right off this tree." He was telling the truth. Around the knothole, the tree was perfectly smooth. "Go figure it," grumbled his opponent as the crowd cheered. Another tale about Davy's bragging concerned one hot day on the banks of the Mississippi River. As old Davy was dragging along, feeling restless because he hadn't had a fight in 10 days, he came across a keelboat being pushed upriver. The fellow pushing it had hair as black as a crow's wing and wore a red flannel shirt. There wasn't a man on the river that wouldn't have recognized Mike Fink, king of the Mississippi boatmen. "Hello there," Davy shouted from the shore. "If you don't watch out, that boat's gonna run back down the river. I'm about the only ring-terror in the world who can tame the Mississippi." Mike Fink gave Davy a mean look. "Oh, you don't know the beans from buckshot, you old cock-a-doodle-doo," he said. "Oh, well, I don't care a Johnny cake for you either," said Davy. "Come ashore and let me whip you. I've been trying to get a fight all morning." Then he flapped his hands near his hips and crowed like a rooster. Mike Fink, feeling chock full of a fight himself, curved his head and neighed like a horse. Davy Crockett thumped his chest and roared like a gorilla. Mike Fink threw back his head and howled like a wolf. Davy Crockett arched his head back and screamed like a panther. The two of them kept carrying on, flapping, shaking, thumping, howling, screaming, until both were too tired of carrying on. Then Davy waved his hand. "Farewell, stranger. I'm satisfied now." "Me too," said Mike. "Feeling much better myself." In spite of all of his boasting and bragging and all of his screaming and fighting, Davy Crockett did do some remarkable things for humankind. Take this story he always liked to tell about himself and the sun. One day it was so cold the sunlight froze as fast as it rose. When Davy Crockett saw daybreak was so far behind time, he grew concerned. "I'd better strike up a little fire with my fingers," he said, "light my pipe and travel a few miles to see what's going on." Davy brought his knuckles together like two thunderclouds, but the sparks froze before he could even begin to collect them. He had no choice but to start on his way and try to keep himself from freezing. So off he went, hop, skip, and a jump, whistling his tune to his favorite song, Fire in the Mountains. Even then, his hat froze to his head and 20 icicles formed under his nose. After he hopped, skipped, and jumped 10 miles up to the peak of Daybreak Hill, Davy Crockett discovered what exactly was going on. The earth had froze on her axis and couldn't turn around. The reason was the sun had gotten jammed between two giant cakes of ice. "Creation," said Davy. "Something must be done, or human life is over." So he took a can of bear grease and poured about a ton of it over the sun's face. Then he kicked the cakes of ice until he wrenched the sun loose. "Move along, Charlie, keep it going," he shouted. In about 15 seconds, the sun woke up with such a beautiful smile that it made Davy sneeze. Then he lit his pipe with a blaze of sunlight, and as the earth began to move on her axis, he headed home with a piece of sunrise in his pocket. The end. Notes on the story. The real Davy Crockett was a backwoodsman born in the mountains of Tennessee in 1786. At that time, the settlers of the backwoodsmen of Tennessee and Kentucky lived rugged lives devoted to hunting, trapping, clearing the land, and building homesteads. When Davy ran for Congress in 1827, he became famous for satirizing the difficult lives of these frontiermen and women. He gained further legendary status after he died at the Alamo in 1836, fighting for Texas in its struggle for independence from Mexico. Following Davy Crockett's death, a series of small paper-bound books were published that contained comically exaggerated tales and woodcuts about his early life. Called the Davy Crockett's Almanacs, these books included stories and sayings of the time. And although no one knows who wrote these first American tall tales, they are still celebrated for their wit and storytelling. Newspapers, songs, plays, television shows, and films have further explained the Crockett legend. But the following story is derived mostly from these original almanacs.